Welcome, everyone, to the Seniors Flourish podcast. I'm actually super excited about today's topic. And we're going to be talking about being an authentic occupational therapy practitioner. And my guest today is Debora Davidson. She is an occupational therapist. And we're going to be talking about how can we be true to ourselves as OT practitioners, talk a little bit about productivity, ethics, and just kind of have an honest discussion on what currently is going on and what are some things that we can do about it, if that's even a possibility. So welcome, Debora. I'm excited you are here.
Well, thank you, Mandy. I'm excited too. Very excited. I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, yeah. Thanks. So we're just going to kind of go through a little bit about your background, kind of your journey, how you discovered OT. I think people really like to hear. Everybody has a story about their OT journey. So why don't you just give a little background? We can kind of go from there.
Well, thanks. Okay. Well, I discovered OT as a kid, which is a little unusual for when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was a kid of the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, and I just had a real strong internal drive to help people and to experience a variety of people. And so I looked for opportunities to volunteer. And when I was like a sophomore in high school, I think it was, I volunteered at a United Cerebral Palsy recreational program and met all kinds of people, all kinds of young adults down to like preschool age kids with various kinds of disabilities. And we just were there to have fun. And we would spend the day and have lunch and do activities. And it was perfect. I felt like I was in heaven. So then I started actively looking for, well, how can you keep doing this as a grown-up? And,
That's always.
And I was interested in healthcare. Yeah. And so I just went into my guidance counselor's office in this high school, and I looked in books, and I found OT, and that was it.
Wow.
So I enrolled at University of Illinois in the bachelor's in OT program, and headed to Champaign, Urbana, and here I am. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I would say most people seem to kind of stumble. I mean, I guess you did stumble upon it, but usually that's kind of neat that it's kind of just about, it sounds like it's been who you are.
I think it's in my DNA. I do.
Yeah. I think a lot of us say that, actually, to be honest. It's just in our souls. Mm-hmm. So what kinds of things, like from a professional career, what's been that look like?
Well, I kind of look at my career in epics now because I'm 61. I just turned 61 a few days ago, so I'm getting used to that. And so I just look at it in units. So my first unit was child and adolescent mental health and psychiatry in schools, and I worked with kids in psychiatric hospital, in residential treatment, in specialized school programs for kids with behavioral and emotional problems. And I loved it. And, but there came a point after about 13 years, and I wanted to refresh, and I had discovered I enjoyed teaching. I did some guest teaching and stuff like that. And there was an opening at the School of Allied Health at University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston. They were looking for a faculty person with pediatric background, and they hired me. So I got to start teaching with a great group of experienced faculty that mentored me so well. And then I continued in academia with some side gigs working with kids with mental health problems for like another 20 years. And I taught at various universities in Texas, and then Washington University in St. Louis, and Maryville University in St. Louis, and then ended up at St. Louis University. But I had a yearning to go back to private or to clinical practice, and I decided a private practice was in my future, and I just really wanted to try doing practice according to what I had been teaching.
So yeah. Like, sometimes there's a disconnect between the two.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah. You were very idealistic in the classroom, but I thought, I want to be idealistic as a practitioner. So I started a company called Bright Futures, and I have been doing that and working with young adults and sometimes not so young adults who have
Yeah.
mental health and or developmental problems to help them get the life that they want, working, living independently of their family, or at least in their own place. Nobody's totally independent,
Mm-hmm.
but in their own place, having friends, having fun things to do, doing volunteer work that they feel is important, and just, feeling more fulfilled. And
Yeah.
so I've been doing that. So there's the child and adolescent psych, there's academia, and then there's the private practice. And that's,
The sections of the OT professional journey,
yeah,
it sounds like.
yes, exactly.
Well, I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about how we found each other. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of a funny little story, don't you think? I was kind of just digging around because that's just kind of what I do. I'm always digging around and trying to get more information about OT, and I stumbled upon an article that you wrote in Today in OT,
Mm-hmm.
and so I reached out basically just to say, hey, can I read some of that or quote some of that article? Because I think there's so many things that, you know, were just so true. And then we decided just to have a phone conversation, and it just kind of escalated. We were just talking. And then we're
I
like, we need
know.
to get this on a podcast.
Yeah, that was a
It was
fun,
really,
fun.
yeah. So the article, that I, initially found was called "Seeking Your Advice: Ideas for OT's Future." And like I said, that was in the Today in OT blog. And I'm just going to really loosely paraphrase kind of what the article was about. So basically, you're talking about having a level 2 student in your private practice. And then she was also working part-time in a rehab center with older adults that she was really excited about.
Right.
And basically, she was really just disheartened with that level 2. And I'm going to kind of quote a couple little sentences from the article. And one was like, it, quote, gave her the false impression that real OT is quick, rote, and dollar focused. And so I guess at the end of the article, you were just kind of really discussing, how her feelings and like, what do we do about that? And so then you posed the question, what will we do to take control of our professional practice in the face of the business-driven medical model that so many of us now work within? And I was like, oh my gosh, yes. I mean, people, not only have I personally experienced it, like it's just a common, it's common in
Yes.
the OT profession in
It's
many different settings.
normative.
So
Yeah.
yeah. And so that's kind of why I reached out to you in the first place. And so then you had a follow-up article where there was, they had a lot of feedback and a lot of comments and people expressing exactly kind of what I had felt. And so I'm just going to read a couple of these little comments that you had received that you had quoted in the article. So, quote, it's a constant ethical battle for me. I have burned out after such a short time. I love when I'm able to help others. However, I do not feel that I can do so while maintaining the business side of practice. I'm $38,000 in debt with student loans and already ready to retire. I wish I had an answer. I'm just like, it's so heartbreaking. And
Yeah, and those were the responses to that blog. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and then the other one that I felt like it was just really, like I said, I really related to was, quote, most OT practitioners did not go into the profession to do conveyor belt therapy. We chose this profession because we care deeply about our clients and their wishes and desires. And I think that is absolutely true. I mean, like you were talking about being idealistic in the classroom. I mean, I've said on previous podcasts, I get a little idealistic about healthcare in general because you have this idea that you are, you have this altruistic feeling and that you just want to help others and like really make a difference. And then you have all these barriers cutting you down, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I just really wanted to kind of talk about that and just have a good discussion, and kind of just go over like what do you think the term productivity means in healthcare? Isn't that's a
Okay.
loaded question?
Yeah,
Hot
that is.
topic.
That is. I think that could be a whole blog right there. Well, we know what the business side of it thinks it is. That is to
Right.
be bringing in money, so billable units. My idea
Mm-hmm.
of productivity is that we have evaluation that answers key questions that our
Mm-hmm.
clients are
Yeah.
asking. That they want to know in order to have a better life. What do I need? What's going wrong? What do I have to work with? And then doing interventions that fit them and fit their goals. And that
Yeah.
actually, I like to have the addition. I want my clients to find their sessions to be enjoyable for the most part. So I
Yes.
want it not only to be effective, but I want it to actually be pleasant. I want them to leave each
Yeah.
session feeling uplifted and more hopeful and, better than when they came in the door. And then ultimately, I want them to hit the button on their big outcomes and,
Right.
that we're done, we're finished when they have a life or have achieved the skills or the living situation or whatever it is they wanted
Mm-hmm.
to their satisfaction. That's to me productivity.
Yeah.
That's my
Yeah.
idea of productivity.
That's yeah. Well, and that's of course what a lot of us want productivity, to be. But like,
Mm-hmm.
so in lots of different settings. So, I mean, I haven't worked like in private practice per se, like you have. But, I've done home health and skilled nursing,
Mm-hmm.
worked in, assisted livings and outpatient
Mm-hmm.
and done inpatient. I kind of done a little bit of everything. And, different types of facilities have different requirements and things like that. So, like, from your experience or what have you seen over the years, like, what is a reasonable level of billable units and what's not? And, like, how does that, how does
Right.
that differ from a business standpoint since you
Yeah.
have a private practice?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and I was thinking about that also in relative to my earlier life when I worked in a inpatient psych units, and
Mm-hmm.
we were tracking our productivity. And I think that if you're going to have people treating patients a significant part of their day, but they also need to document and they also need to go to sometimes connect with other practitioners or with,
Yeah.
in ways that are not billable, maybe
Mm-hmm.
even with family members. That I think probably 75% productivity is pretty dang good
Yeah.
to have quality, and for
Mm-hmm.
people to also have some time to have some supervision and professional
Yeah.
development kind of stuff that they do inserted in their work week, which I think is important,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially for
Exactly. I
younger
mean,
practitioners. Yeah, to have
mm-hmm.
some. Yeah. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I
Especially
know
like you're
that sounds
saying,
outrageous because what I'm hearing is people are being told 95 to 100% productivity. Some people say 100%. And I'm like, well, that's absurd because you have to walk to the next patient,
yeah, I mean, like wash your hands, like go to
Yeah.
the bathroom, look at
Maybe
charts,
use the
talk to, I mean,
bathroom. Right.
yeah, I
It's,
mean, I
yeah.
don't know. I mean, obviously these are concerns and things that we talk about all the time. And it's just like, I don't, whoever is making these rules is not actually has ever been a practicing therapist. I really truly believe that. Or if they
No.
have, they are not being realistic on,
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
not being true to what the reality of being, a therapist is. And, it's really tricky because, I do understand like from, if you own a business or like you have a private practice like you do, you want to try to, it is a business. So healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
specifically in America, is a business. And
Oh,
I
it sure is.
absolutely understand that from a business standpoint. But like, what do we do to, satisfy and make, have good client care and be a steward to the company you work for? Because obviously, if the company makes no money, like you don't have a job. Like I
Sure.
completely understand that. But so it's like trying to find that balance between, like you were saying, being productive and having realistic productivity standards, but also being able to provide good quality care, and doing our job and then finding that satisfaction. So those are the things I think are really, really challenging. I say challenging, and it's actually very I get angry over it.
Yeah, I think
so I'm being all
more,
like PC. Yeah, I'm like, oh, it's very aggravating, but it's really,
down.
but it really makes us all angry, and it's just like no one really knows exactly what to do. Like in the past, as you have some really good years of experience under your belt, what like, do you have any stories or anything that like from the past, like has it always been like that, or what's your experience?
No, it hasn't always been like that. I mean, when I first started practicing, well, I worked in settings, I worked in community mental health to start with, and then in a private little nonprofit school, and we didn't have any billable anything. I mean, it was just part of the package. We were paid for by the taxpayers at community mental health, and by a fund for that. And then in the little school, the kids all had all of our services built into their day. And so we didn't worry about it at all. When I started in the hospitals in Texas, they had just started charging specifically for OT. Before I had arrived there, we were part of the bed rate. And now this was a hospital that served everybody from people with the most, fancy private insurance down to people that had only Medicaid. And so it was kind of nice because I think we got to get our feet wet slowly. The Medicaid clientele, we knew we weren't going to get much reimbursement for, to be honest. And so there was not too much pressure. It was like, well, you can do as much as you want because, it's all kind of theoretical. And it was very nice that way. We had people with huge needs, people who had traveled. We had people who had traveled, 600 miles, 800 miles to come to an outpatient appointment because we were where they could get care. And, we had very destitute families who lived way out in very isolated rural areas sometimes, and so it was a very high need population. And we had the freedom to provide the level of care that we had, really, good care, really good care.
Yeah.
If I had a kid in my inpatient unit who we thought could use not just the 1 hour a day of OT, but actually could use another extra session, we could just layer it in as long as we could fit them in our schedule. They could have as much as we could lavish.
Yeah,
and that was beautiful.
That's amazing. Yeah, obviously that's not the situation.
That's not how it is. No, that's not how it
These
is now.
days. No. I know.
And then I worked in another setting. Well, I want to tell you another one real quick. I worked in another setting in a residential treatment program for kids with psychiatric and behavioral problems. And I watched it shift. When I started there, we were encouraged to make innovative programs, and we really did. We did a lot of life skills programs and groups and all this, really cool stuff. And then things shifted, and I think they became much more financially bound and concerned, and started billing Medicaid for our work. And suddenly we were reduced to one therapist instead of two, and basically told that we should focus on just fine motor and sensory. And that was it. And it was like, well, that is very different than what we were doing. And it was sad to see that reduction.
Right. And then, I think the other thing that people, get angry about, I guess, is, someone else, as in a company, telling us that we don't have the knowledge or to make clinical judgments and say that this person
don't get
X, Y, and Z.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it's just like, those are the things I think it really is hard as an OT practitioner, because like sometimes you even have like treatments that you know would be beneficial to a patient. Let it be, I'm trying to think of an example. I don't know, like using certain modalities, and they'll be like,
Right.
no, you can't use that at all because it's not paid for. And you're just
That's
like,
not what
well,
we're doing. Yeah. That's not
yeah,
what
like
we're
how
doing
am I,
here.
I
Or the
know that.
other situation that's almost worse, where they say you need to do ADL training with this frail elder who's not conscious. Right? I've heard that one.
Yeah. Or for
and
75 minutes or something.
right. And you're like, well, that's impossible. And yeah, there have been stories of patients who have actually been harmed by having over treatment because somebody up top wanted to garner that increased money that they could get by if they said that this person needed all that rehab, or it's just that's shameful. No, we are professionals. We are licensed professionals, and we have years of education and training, and we have ethics. We have our standards of practice that we need to follow, and regarding that, and so that we need to have the courage of our conviction and of our background and our association and our license to be able to stand up and say, in this situation, I'm not able to do that. And I won't do it. Or I will do this because this patient is not going to meet their goals if we don't address this. And I know that's a hard thing to hear. And I am sitting here in the safety of my own little office in my home, from the vantage point of being 61 years old, and I am not, in the same financial situation I was in, 30 years ago with my children and everything going full tilt. And I recognize that, but it is wrong for a non-licensed, non-professional, not OT person to be telling you how to treat your patient.
Yeah.
That's not cool.
No, it's not cool. Oh, like if you could see me, like when I get really excited, one, I'm really trying hard not to talk too fast, because when I get passionate or upset or whatever, I start just going. So thanks for being a calm presence, Debora. But also my face gets red, my neck gets red.
I know. I hear you.
I just get,
One of my faculty friends used to laugh about how my color would change when we were having upsetting conversations. Like, Deborah's turning maroon again,
There she goes.
Here we go.
So why do you think so many settings are demanding such high levels of productivity? Obviously, it has to do with reimbursement and payment and that kind of things. But I mean, I don't know. Thoughts on that?
I do. I mean, like as you're saying, it's a business, and I think there is greed in this business, just as there is greed in any kind of business sometimes. So sometimes it's that. And before our call, I looked up a couple things, and I found, articles about some hospitals that are designated nonprofit who are making $150 to $300 million excess off of patient care. Okay, so let's not kid ourselves that there's no greed in healthcare. There can be. Right. That's not always the case. Not most hospitals are making those huge profits. And the other thing we need to know is, for example, in skilled nursing, those folks are on a financial roller coaster, because as every time the legislation changes and the rules change, they can take a hit up or down. And, I saw another article about how skilled nursing in Pennsylvania had like a 30% change in their intake of money over a year and a half period. So that as a business, that's just terrifying. So they get scared, and they also get greedy.
Absolutely.
Those are two things. I think another thing is that the way that we have approached health insurance in our country is such a patchwork and such a lot of kind of jerry-rigged, half-baked things that get put together and taped and wired together in weird ways, so that the bureaucracy is just really expensive to navigate.
Right.
I mean, just in my own personal experience, we just moved states, and my husband turned 65 this year. So we had all this like
Okay.
insurance. Okay, we're moving from one
Yeah.
state to another, and then he's going on to different insurance because he's now eligible for some stuff. And we
Right.
still cannot seem to convince the people that in our first state that we've moved. Like they just can't seem to believe it.
Yeah.
And they're like, but you're still with us.
Yeah.
Well, no, we've been telling you for 6, 8, 10 months that this is happening. And I don't understand why you can't quit sending me documents that are hard to decipher. But you keep thinking I'm there,
Yeah.
but I'm here. And like, and I think that in the systems that they waste a lot of money chasing a nickel. There's a funny saying that we used to say at one of the places I once worked, I won't name them, we will spare no expense to save money. Okay?
Yeah.
And I think that they put that on the backs of little workers like us therapists, thinking that they're going to save a lot of money by squeezing us real tight. Well, we are not the big money funnels. We are not. We make a decent wage, but we're not where the leaks are, I don't think, for the most part. I think they waste a lot of money, partly on the bureaucracy and partly on greed. And they would get so much more out of their professional workers if they would trust us to do our job and let us do it.
Yeah.
And get out of our way by over micromanaging everything.
Yeah, I'm sure the whole insurance thing is honestly way bigger than me, like more than I absolutely understand. But like you were kind of referencing that, you were saying like, all these forms that you have a hard time deciphering. And you are a professional woman that has education and work in healthcare, and you have a hard time navigating the healthcare system. Like,
and I can't read those forms. And my husband worked in managed care for years, and he's the one that has to read the forms because I just say, look, honey, can I just, I'll make you a nice cup of tea if you'll just do this. And he's very good about it, but he finds them very difficult. But he at least speaks the language so that when he calls them, he says things like, what's the capitated rate for this? And that scares them. And then they back off and he knows the secret language, Is this not in your formulary? He'll say. I'm like, holy cow, what does that mean? But it's very scary sounding. And
cracking off the terms.
I know.
There's so many things to it. And I know that, like I said, it's not just, us being squeezed. It's, companies. I mean, I know with some of this, the bundle systems that some facilities are experiencing. So they're kind of like bypassing some of the skilled nursing, and they're, going home, or, we're getting them out of the hospital faster, which equals, sicker and higher needs. So it's hard because you have these patients that have higher needs, and then you have like limitations on what you can and cannot do. And it really, I mean, so I can see I'm trying to look at it from big picture, even though I know I don't understand completely big picture. But like you said, like, they get things cut, they don't make any money. They get some things passed and they get paid for more. And it's just, it is a game. It's just definitely a game, and it's really hard. But and like you were saying, referencing, like businesses that, nonprofits that make extra money, or, national business or healthcare rehab businesses that are fined
that actually
a lot of money, that have the reserves to actually pay it, and they're still open. And then like what us as therapists, we don't get any, I guess, benefit. Like it didn't really affect, either people lost jobs or like nothing. You just keep working, and you're just like, how can someone make that much money, pay that big fines, still be running because you're doing unethical practices? And, and I'm sure it's, like I said, it's bigger than that. And like, I don't know everything, but it's just really hard and even as an employee standpoint, people are asking, well, what does that mean? And no one says anything. They're just like, oh, I saw it in the news. And you're like,
well, I think we have to start saying something. I'm glad that you brought that up about unethical practices. When we're being told to do things that we know are against the patient's best interests, or to charge for things inappropriately or whatever, we have to speak out. And there are ways to do that. That's one of the benefits of using the AOTA and your state association and being a member
and being a part of them. Yeah,
because absolutely. They will help you to do this in a way that is safe, which doesn't mean you're of course, guaranteed not to get lose your job or something. But I wish I had this in front of me. I don't. But not too long ago, there was an OT and I think it was a speech therapist that got together and blew the whistle. And it, actually they came out of it smelling like a rose, which was fabulous. I can't say that will always happen, but really It's on us. We've made a promise when we became professionals to follow our standards of practice. And if you think that someone is, being mistreated, by being like when they force us to try to do a kind of therapy with somebody who's really not ready for it or capable of handling that, or, when they refuse to let us provide a therapy for somebody. Let's say you have somebody that you think is having dysphagia, or, you have somebody that you see is at risk of getting a decubitus or just, we just need to report. We need to say to them, and that's a pressure point. I sure would not like to have to say something. I want you to let me do the right thing here, because it's my license and it's my sleep at night. I can't sleep at night if I know I haven't done the right thing. And I think, the people that we work for, they may not be therapists. They may not even be health professionals. They may be business people. Or they may just have lost their mojo for being health professionals. But I think that, if we make a relationship with them and try to be persuasive, I think a lot of times people are more persuadable than we think, A lot of people don't know what OT really could do. They've only seen the watered down, rote, tiny OT that they have made us do. If we can educate them in some way, I don't know how that is. In services, talks, go and have coffee with them and just say, look, this is what I want to do for this patient. And, with you leaning on me and breathing down my neck, I'm not able to do it, but I want to. So can you just let me do that? Their family's going to be really happy if we do this, And if they can go home actually do well at home, then everybody's going to be like singing your praises of your facility. So let me help you look good, because I know how to do that.
Putting it in their court a little bit, and I completely agree. And, just reading like the article that you wrote, with some of the comments and the comments that I hear through my website and things like that. It's so hard because, of course, like you have people. I'm just using skilled nursing because that's my current setting, and but like so many people, people be like, don't go into skilled nursing, or don't, like this. It's a terrible place to work. It's not that the providing that service in general for a lot of people, it's not because they don't want to provide that service and help the older adult population, but because of the ethical practices, it's deterring some really good ethical OTs that, want to provide a high standard of care. And, it's a population obviously I hold dear to my heart, and that I feel that really need strong advocates. They need people who care and want them to succeed. And, people don't want to work in these types of facilities or certain areas because of that. And that's actually heartbreaking too, because it's ultimately the patients that are going to be suffering. And it's, and then some people that do work there, I've just been hearing all sorts of stories about them having these their own ethical dilemmas, like saying, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I know I quote shouldn't be doing X, Y, and Z, or documenting off the clock, or
Mm-hmm.
doing more documentation when with my patient than I should be, or whatever. We all
Or
know what our
sometimes I think
standards should
witnessing,
be.
I've heard people who have suffered from just witnessing the poor level of care from other healthcare providers in that setting.
Mm,
Just like
mm-hmm.
realizing,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, this person needed to have their water refreshed, and nobody's been doing it, or
Yeah.
this
Just
person needs to be
right.
moved and nobody's doing it. It's not the OT's role to do that, but it's just
Right.
painful. Yeah.
It is. It really, really is. And it's like, I feel like a lot of people say things like, well, tell me, it's not because I don't like working with the population. I just, I have these ethical dilemmas. And the
Mm-hmm.
truth of it is that I feel forced to do some of these things that I know I shouldn't be, but I need a job. And like some
Mm-hmm.
areas of, the United States are totally saturated, especially if they have schools the
Right. Yeah.
occupational therapy or occupational therapy assistant schools, and people are just like, I'm just thankful to have a job.
Yeah.
And so specifically those people, they're like, okay, I got a job, and they're like, I want to hold on to it, and you're trying to like adhere to those standards. But also people don't realize that, you, like you said, you can talk to your supervisor. It's not always going to work, but like if you don't even try, like I don't know, like these are things that they need to be aware of, that as an employee, you know that you want to make sure that your supervisor or manager or whoever knows that how you feel, and that
Well, what you're
you feel like
seeing,
there's an
what you're
ethical
seeing,
dilemma.
I think they need to hear
Yeah.
data.
Yeah.
Like, this is what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
I've got this many
Hmm.
people, and this percentage of them are real appropriate for this level of care, and this percentage is not. They need more,
Yeah,
or they
like, and
need
how
less,
how
or
am I supposed to
different.
do that? Right. I
Well, I
know.
think
It's
I
just
think talking to them, I think I am encouraging practitioners to refresh right now, to refresh on
yeah.
their OT practice framework a little bit, pull it out, take a look at those, look at your standards of practice. Um,
Hmm.
think about, get recentered a little bit, recalibrated. If you're in a setting that is just so far off that you're feeling lost in the woods, um,
Hmm.
and educate your people above you about what they could have. Educate families if you can. Say, I would really like to provide this, um, and right now I'm kind of in a bind, and let them pressure
Yeah, and have
the
families
uppers.
advocate. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
want my mother to have time in the kitchen before she goes home.
Yes.
I want somebody to take
Yep.
her in your kitchen and see if she's safe on her feet, and see if she's going to be okay to prepare food. Have them, let them know that's a possibility here, but I need a little push from behind. Now that could get you in trouble. Yeah, I think what's the other thing is what I said before. We have to kind of uh, get stronger, get more tolerant of not always being popular. It's, you
Yeah.
know, you're not, nice girls don't always finish first. I'm sorry. And,
Well, and
I'm a
that
really nice girl. I'm a
exactly.
get along kind of person. I love to get along and make everybody so happy. But if it's costing my client, and maybe it's easy to be strong for them, I can take a
Hmm.
lot of punishment, and I can just be nice. But if my patient is losing out and not actually getting OT, and we're charging them, but
Hmm.
I know that's not real OT, I call it faux T. That's just faux T.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yes.
doing it.
OT.
I'm not
Yeah.
doing it. And I'll just,
Hmm.
then I can have strength. Then I'm good to be an advocate when it's for somebody that I care about. And
Yeah.
suddenly it's okay to make somebody else unhappy with me. So I think we
Yeah.
have to just get strong and um, speak out and educate.
Hmm.
And I think we need to support each other. And I love what you're doing, Mandy. I love what you're doing with
Oh,
your
thanks.
all of your stuff on your website, and connecting with people and this kind of thing, where you're like getting ideas out there and inspiring your base of people that are working with older adults in particular. I think we just
Yeah,
need to connect with each other.
absolutely. And I feel like sometimes people feel very alone and they don't
Mm-hmm.
know
They
what to
do.
do. And like, I'm not
Yeah.
pretending to have all the answers, but I love the idea of having a conversation where we can spur some ideas, or at least maybe someone feels reassured that, like, okay, you're right. I can advocate for my patients, because not all the patients have, like, not all the patients have family members. And it's like
Mm-mm.
part of our job, I do feel, is to
Well,
be an advocate for some of those,
mm-hmm.
for our patients, if that's really what we're trying to do. But like
It's
we
a
were talking about
huge
earlier,
thing.
yeah, making sure that we're part of AOTA and state OT organizations, and also making sure that we let them know what our concerns are. I mean, like, you can contact AOTA through the, like, regulatory and reimbursement
Mm-hmm.
organization. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll put like some of the email addresses of where they say to kind of,
Yes.
where
Yeah.
you
And
can
the
email them your
practice
concerns. That,
division. Mm-hmm.
yeah, yep. And I
Yeah.
can put those in. I'll put those also in the show notes so people can kind of have, easy, so they don't have to dig for it themselves. Because that's part of it. You're like, oh,
Good.
I should totally do that. But then it's like, oh, we're
Well,
working 40 hours,
I'll,
we're burnt
let me tell
out,
you
and we're
something.
documenting off the clock. Like, when am I going to look for, so
Well,
I'm trying to make
right.
little things make it easier,
I'm glad. Well,
to like,
that's why what you're doing is
yeah,
so important because yeah, people need to have it be easy and they need to feel that's not just, you're right to do that as an AOTA member or a state association
hmm
member, but it's what they want you to do, right?
yeah,
It's what the associations
yeah.
want us to do. They want to hear from us. I'll tell you what, something exciting. I sent an email
What?
to Amy Lamb, the AOTA president,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
she and I had a phone conversation today, this morning. It's
Oh,
like a
really?
miracle. Yeah, I've never talked to her in my
Was
whole
it?
life before, and it was just really exciting to talk with her. But I have talked with
She's
people in
super
the
refreshing.
practice. Oh, she's amazing.
Uh-huh.
And let me tell you what she says about
Yeah.
herself. I think she would give me permission to repeat this. She said, um, she likes to consider herself. She said, I want this, I'm quoting her, I want to be a president for the practitioners. She said
Mm-hmm.
that,
Oh,
which it
yeah.
just gave me like
That's
goosebumps.
exactly
And I
right.
was like, yes, because I
Uh-huh.
think that's unique. We've had a lot of great AOTA presidents, but the majority that I've known in my life of being an OT have been people from academia, and that, and
Mm-hmm.
research and scholarship, and but she has a background in policy and in that kind of stuff, but she is very much a practitioner, and I could tell from talking with her that she thinks like a practitioner, and she's very concerned about these issues
Mm-hmm.
that we're talking about, and she's very aware of them.
Absolutely.
And I think she's bringing
Mm-hmm.
that strong flavor into the National Association. So if you're a practitioner who's maybe felt a little left out, and felt like, well, conference and stuff isn't really for me, and the journal's not really for me, I think you have a louder
Right.
voice than you've ever had over there. And this is the time to join up and get heard.
Mm-hmm.
Because we are in a pickle, we are. And it's not
We
just
are in a
us,
pickle.
it's physicians,
Right.
it's nurses, it's
Yep.
it's
Yep.
SLPs, it's PTs, it's
Mhm.
all of us professionals who do the hands on actual patient care are all under many of the same clouds. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you're not
So
alone.
speak up,
And
and
we need to not
we're
like
not alone.
bellyache ourselves to death so that we get real down and can't do anything. But I think it's helpful to know you're not alone. And,
Mm-hmm.
there are ways out of this, but it may take a while. I would think it will,
Yeah.
given where things
Absolutely.
are. But
Oh, I know.
another thing I
And
would
I
offer to
also,
people to help them
yeah.
in this time of trial and tribulation is,
Yeah.
I love my private practice. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, it's the funnest kind of practice I've ever done, which is saying a ton because I've always loved my clinical work, always. Um,
Uh-huh.
but this has been so much fun because I am just doing fee for service private work. And that means I can do whatever I know is going to be best, or at least what I think is going to help. I can do it. And I don't have to jump through anybody's hoops or make it fit into their paradigm. If I think it's, if it fits my paradigm of my scope of practice and my skill set and my clients want to try it, we can do it. And I can,
and that's
we
exciting.
work together. I can be totally client-centered to a degree I've never been able to be before. And it is. And I think if people would recognize that you can do a private practice just a little bit of time, you don't have to do a full-blown private practice and you quit your day job.
Right.
You can have a few private clients and, really enjoy the refreshment of being able to fully practice your profession in new and creative ways.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I don't have like a true private practice, but between, working for other businesses, PRN, and also I do, independent contracting, and I have 3 little kids, and then doing the website.
Well, I don't know.
And then working on launching the Learning Lab. I really love the challenge, and I love OT, and I love like mentoring and helping new OTs. So I feel like it's such a transition period, and that's kind of like, I guess I'd love to talk about your website a little bit, AuthenticOT.com, and kind of like how does all this fit together? How does this whole conversation fit with being an authentic OT practitioner?
Okay. Well, I guess it sprang out of my own clinical practice of Bright Futures. And I was just having so much fun and enjoying it. And I wanted to make a presentation about it at the AOTA conference. I'm like, well, I would love to see other people start this kind of a practice, because I have, after 5 years or 4 years, wherever I was at that point, I've seen enough success that I know that it works for a substantial proportion of people that come my way. And it's the first thing that's worked for most of them. And I would love to see other OTs do it. So I was thinking about that. And then I had this epiphany while I was starting to draw up the presentation. I was like, well, why does it have to be my kind of a practice even? I mean, really, what if somebody wants to work with older adults and help them age in place and do it well and have a great life? Or what if somebody wants to work with teenagers with autism? Or what if, could be all kinds of things people would want to do.
So many areas. Yeah.
So maybe I should just try to help people who want to think out of the box. And that's where Authentic OT grew out of. I just decided sometimes I felt, frankly, that AOTA plays it safe and doesn't say things that they need to say, like, hey, people are suffering out there, or, not everybody is practicing OT to its fullest. I mean, we say live life to its fullest. Well, how about practice OT to its fullest? And I've noticed they've started using a phrase, practice to the top of your license, which I think is, that's a phrase that they're using. And they're talking about,
really?
And I'm like, that's what I'm talking about, is like doing the whole full tilt OT that you know how to do, and bringing somebody, I love to surprise my clients that they get more than they thought they would get when they're working with me. They come in and they say, well, I just want a job, any job. I just need a job. And I'm like, well, let's talk about, that's fine. And I'll help you do that. And if that's all you want, but I'm going to try to persuade you that maybe you would rather have a bigger picture, like a career, that you love, that you feel passionate about. And a job would be the first rung on the ladder. But what about the big picture, the long haul, Or
looking at someone holistically,
and maybe you would like to have some fun things to do when you're not working. Maybe that would be nice.
Yeah.
Maybe it would be great if you felt like really confident enough to go and get your own apartment. And if you had the supports that you need to do it well, would you like that? And they're like, could I have that? Well, I'm like, you're 27 years old. I mean, a lot of people have that. I don't see why you couldn't have that. If I think they could, I mean, if I'm looking at somebody who clearly, needs a lot more support than that, then we would have to look at a different route, like some kind of supported living environment. Or live at home with mom and dad. If you all are real happy with it, it's not for me to say. I just raise questions,
Right.
and then I do what I'm told, you know? So, but I just think that we have such potential. Occupational therapy is so powerful when it actually is practiced. It really is. We can transform people's lives. And that's why I got the idea that I really wanted to have some forum, and that's what Authentic OT is a forum for me to just get on my soapbox and try to inspire other OTs to get in the game, do what you fell in love with. When I saw their shining faces in my classroom, when we went through all the theories and the foundations and problem-based learning, and I got
to get excited.
Really fun
just
stuff, and they would look so excited, and then they'd sometimes come back from field work looking all down, and it's like, well, it does work though. Real OT really works. So, and it's fun.
Yeah,
it's fun for the practitioner. I come
fun.
back from my sessions just high as a kite, wee, this was the best day yet. I just had the best day yet. I went to the horse barn, and I went and toured the back of the deli, and we found out what they do back there. And then we, it's just it's really great. And my client has a friend now, or my client is really excited about volunteering at the cat shelter. And, that's great.
Living
if they're
life,
happy,
right?
I'm happy. Yeah. Yeah. So I just want to inspire people to get back to what they fell in love with, and refresh themselves and find as many ways as possible to actually live that in their careers, because you can have that, and the world needs it. People need it.
Yeah. People need it. Oh, I love this discussion, Debora. Sorry if I got a little overly excited. I get so passionate, and my heart just kind of bleeds a bit for coworkers. Yeah, I am a little altruistic myself. And so I like to say I'm maybe my family always kind of jokes, because I'm I am definitely an altruistic realist, if that is even a term, but I'm always have really, I use it, and people are but I just feel I have high expectations, and I really look for the best, but I'm also very realistic. Okay, but I'm always, I guess a little glass half full, but I just really want other OT practitioners to really just love what we do. And, we just need to be an advocate for ourselves, and a challenge. I guess part of it is I want to just challenge all of the listeners to write to our, national and state organizations, even though it feels like they're not doing, quote, anything. It does. It kind of feels well, I don't know, but they are. There's things going on behind the scenes, and they are trying to do it. I mean, there's just so much red tape. It's just not as black and white as I want it to be, but really just, contact them, let them know what's happening in real life, and, what's happening in the workforce, and just stand strong in your ethical practices, and be an authentic OT practitioner. Be who you want to be, and don't let others influence what that looks like. Just because the person next door is doing, rote exercises all day, and you feel that's not what you want to do. You don't have to do that. We all have our own styles, but you need to be true to yourself and our profession, and represent it well.
So go ahead and take some risks.
Yeah.
Stick your neck out there.
I know.
Yeah.
I think
that's where the fun is.
And the truth of it is it kind of is. I'm kind of like that too. But I know it's easier said than done, but I just really want to challenge people to kind of look at why are you burnt out, if you are being burnt out, and what can you do to make those changes? Let it be, sometimes there's obviously scenarios where you can't just change a job, or, but maybe you can change,
I think we're too quick to
practice
say that.
areas, or Yeah.
I think we're too quick
but
to
there's
say,
just so
but this and
yeah.
but that, and there might be little things
Yep.
that you can do that would refresh you
Absolutely.
immensely. So I'm
That's
going to encourage
exactly.
the listeners to get onto the Authentic OT Facebook page and, like the
Yeah.
page. I try to put a lot of stuff out there, just encouraging stuff and challenging ideas and kind of some of what we've been talking about. There's the website, the Authentic
Yeah.
OT website. And I am real happy to talk with people on the phone and to work with you to think about your situation. If you're working with older adults and that kind of thing, I think Mandy's got it going on. So I'm going to recommend her. If you're working in schools or mental health, or where you would like to be, and you want a little bit of encouragement along those lines, give me a holler. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We just need to support each other, I think, and we're all in this together, honestly. And so I think it's just really important.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I just kind of want to, in closing, thank you so much, Debora, for talking with me today about this and just encouraging everyone to be our authentic OT selves.
Thanks, Mandy. I appreciate it. It's nice talking with you.
Yes. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and we'll chat with you next.